Right. Okay, so welcome to Memento Mori, Remember Death. That's what it stands for. And this is part 2. There's no particular progression of what I covered in part 1 and what I'm going to cover now. It's something that came out of the time that it was Samain, it was All Hallows Eve, it was different aspects of how death is remembered and honored in different cultures or people. And I was inspired to speak on death or to gather and have an open discussion on death. And now it's the Scorpio full moon and also the total lunar eclipse, which is the last one for 3 years. So again, just the inspiration of the timing of what's happening cosmically and how that's affecting us globally and individually. And just feeling that because I'm going through a death and life portal right now, and we all are, always, and mine is just more externally obvious, visible. And what I've been surprised by is how many people have been inspired by it, because I really thought, and I commented on this in the first part of Memento Mori, that I really thought this would scare people and they would run the opposite direction, and actually they're inspired. Not everybody perhaps, but enough. And death to me has been a friend since I can remember. I've never really been scared about it or pushed it away. And it makes sense that in this life, because of my connection to death, whatever has been cultivated in previous lives has come up now. I have guided death meditations regularly, but not from this place of having brain cancer. And I didn't think at all to address it in this kind of forum, to make Facebook posts or some live video or something. Yeah, sure. But not like this. And then I was like, oh, wow, like that was a bit of obvious thing. Now I'm like, oh, right. And I do firmly, honestly believe that part of my purpose in this life actually has to do with supporting others while I support myself and while I'm supported by others to come closer to death and to do this death process publicly and to do it intimately. And I never thought that would be, I never planned on this. So here we are. Thank you to those who are joining live and who are in this sharing. Before we started recording, I believe, I mentioned that I'm extremely emotional, and I don't understand the how, why, and I don't have to, but I'm more emotional since I started the cancer treatment than I have ever been in my life. So I may just start crying and nothing's wrong. Everything's great, actually. So yeah, doing the death process, like the physical death process, publicly and intimately and vulnerably, my sincere desire is that it supports others to make friends more deeply with a physical death. And so that's where I'm coming from in doing this video or having this discussion. It is vulnerable for me, but it also just feels like home. It just feels like this is kind of what I'm meant to do in this life, and that's why it's happening this way. Yeah. So if it supports others to take a little tiny or big step closer to becoming friends with death in the physical form or beyond, I know it supports me, and I mentioned this in the part 1, that it supports me to let others in. It supports me to develop an intimacy that isn't just about what I consider, who I consider safe or close. It's about opening and being in this vulnerability with many. And that's the gift I get out of it. Yeah. So thank you to those who are part of that gift that I get to receive. Yeah. Okay. So just taking a moment for all of us, including me, to connect to why you showed up live or watching the replay at this moment. Why you're leaning into the energy of death. So what your yes is about, and at the same time noticing if there's any no or any resistance, because that's to be honored as well. So many times as humans, we're focused on what we can receive. And that's it, that's important. That's to be open to receiving. So I invite us all to what we can give, not only to other humans through this gathering, through this exploration that we've all given our consent to, that we've all said, okay, I'm going to spend time and energy this way. What we can give, maybe it's to other humans, maybe it's other kingdoms, it's other aspects of Earth. So I'm not going to go into theory. Everything that I'm going to speak about or share today is based on my personal experience in this life. There's traces from previous lives, but yeah, it's not based on theory. And the one thing I am going to bring in that's esoteric, that is about theory, and I want to say it now in the beginning, because it's very touching. There's been teachings that have come through in the Trans-Himalayan tradition that I follow, that I'm a part of, and there's a master that passes on information to those who can channel him, and he's made this statement or this comment that humanity's fear of death, or resistance to death, is the primary, number one obstacle to soul initiation, not just individual, but global, this planet going through its initiation, which is demonstrated by the crisis it's going through. You can call it a global crisis that's manifesting in war, it's manifesting in corona laws and yes, the virus, but also as a result of that, it's manifesting through economic crisis. However it's manifesting, crisis, it's humanity's rejection, fear of, disconnection from the energy of death is what is not allowing this to become a soul initiation as it could. So just take that moment to know that you didn't just show up here for yourself, in case you believe that. And not only for your loved ones or dear ones next, close to you, or those you know. Yeah. So we're in it together. And all of nature, everywhere around us, whether it's the cycle of the seasons, whether it's the moon as it goes through, its different aspects over the month, lunar month. All of nature is connected to this cycle of life, death, rebirth, life, death, and we're part of that as humans. But we've disconnected so much from it globally, maybe not you. And great if that doesn't speak to you. But everywhere around us is a modeling, is an example of death is a friend. Death is just natural. Death is just part of the cycle of life, of nature, and we're part of that. And this whole attitude of conquering nature, or this kind of thing, has led us to this point where we're on auto-destruct. So I'm gonna read some of the questions that came in, and we'll start that way. And at any time, please just type in questions or just speak them out, and that's how we'll do it. Okay, so the first question here: what helps or supports you in the process of death? So I already spoke to this, that since I was, I don't know, definitely since I've been a teenager, a young teenager, that for me, death, I've known it as a friend. It's nothing to be scared about. There's just natural. It's just natural. The way friends are natural. It's an ally. So go back to the question: what helps me or supports me in the process of death? First of all, again, repeating what I said in the part one, we're all in the process of death. Yes, mine is obvious. I have hair loss where the radiation hit. I have physical deterioration that I wouldn't have if I didn't have cancer cells in my brain. Yes. But we're all in the process of death with every breath, with every night's sleep. We're all in the process of death. So what supports me in that process is to know deeply, not as a mental exercise, not as something that I've read in some book or heard others talk about, is to know it in my heart and to know it in my body, even while it's going through cancer, that death is a friend. So this is what supports me the most, I can say. There is no doubt. And so now I pose to you, what would it take for you, whoever's watching this, to feel supported? Because we're all going through the death process, I just said. So inquire for yourself, what would it take for you to feel supported? And right now it might be totally theory. Like, it's not happening. Okay, but it is happening. every breath, you're getting closer to your last. So if there's any shares from that, understand if you need more time and need to go into it in different ways. Maybe you need to walk in nature, or you need to go through some movement or whatever. But to stay with that question as a portal, as a door that opens for you, what helps you? What would help you? What would support you? What would help you get there? To feel death, the energy of death as a friend or an ally. Anyone?
You inspired me very much yesterday. You answered it yesterday. Two things you said that really, really shift something in me, even though I'm friend of death and I was dying this summer. My relationship with Tamir was dying. I went all the way down and went through the other side. But the trust of the love of people, the way you described it, how you gained your trust in humanity and in people and in love, that people can love in this unconditional way. I think that's the key. And also what you said about given this time to digest and be able to collect your life and your lessons and prepare for the next round. This is such a blessing. I wish I would have that before I die.
I want to share that what I found tuning into these questions, that I actually want to lean into death energy in order to let go of the separate identity and bring in the one humanity. And what I want to bring in for everybody and everything on the earth is more life. And what I'm still, the thing that is resisting and what would also support me is the same thing, and that is to live more fully. And so I just need to step it up. And this helps me realize that the cycle of life and death is real, in that sense that the more I live, the more I die, and the more I die, the more I live. The sense of, or idea, or connecting to the idea of physical death is not present at the moment, or maybe I'm just blocking it away. But yeah, there's so much longing and passion about this.
So recently, about a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, I had this, just came naturally, this deep dive into the will to live. And what was interesting, it wasn't the will to live from a survival. Okay, it's not the will to live about this form. It was the will to live at such a deeper level. And it wasn't about, having fun or living out particular experiences, or it was just a gift that I can't put into words yet to really do it justice. But this will to live fully, not to get to my deathbed and, do I have any regrets or do I have anything still pending? It wasn't even that. Much deeper, this will to live. And what it then ignited was the surrender to death, the will to die. And not from a morbid kind of, like, okay, now it's over. There was the two sides to the same coin. And even though death has been a friend, it's during this cancer journey that the will to or the surrender to death, but at a much deeper level. Yeah. And there are daily experiences of, I'll get to that question because that was a question posed, but daily experiences of death. And it was such a lesson in that it's when I fully opened up to one and much deeper, then the other side of the same coin could open up also much deeper than I had known it before, even though supposedly that was my comfort zone. Supposedly, that's something I've explored, supposedly. So yeah, the will to live and the will to die or to dissolve, surrender. Okay, so I spoke about becoming, I asked about becoming, what would support you to become friends or more connected to death. And I spoke about the cycles of nature. So you can look at that as more descending, more embodied, or more connected to matter. And there's the other side of that, which is connection to soul or connection to spirit. When I recognize myself as a soul, that's more ascending, we can say. But both are open doors, or we can open both doors. In this life, in any life, as humans, we have access to both. That to recognize myself as a soul, not in a bypass kind of way that, yeah, this doesn't hurt, or this is all an illusion, Maya, blah, 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 blah. Not from that place, but again, it's the other side of the same coin. This really going into this will to live or will to die, or the surrender to death, will open up its polarity. So to recognize that at my core, or essentially, there's a piece, and in my essence, there's a piece there that is immortal, that is timeless. And whether this form stays or not, whether it goes or not, and of course it will go, it doesn't touch that timeless, boundless, immortal aspect. This doesn't make that better, doesn't make the form part, the human part, the animal body part less or more, nothing like that. It's just they're both there. And so how to become more, how can I support myself in the process of death, or become more friendly with death? One is through reconnecting to nature and the cycles of nature all around me. And the other is to identify, to recognize myself as soul and immortal, both together. That's been my experience. Yeah, okay. There's been a question, and do I have any kind of ritual around in this process of death? And I've spoken about this, or I've written about this, and it seems almost funny. That's why I'm kind of laughing now. But it's such a container for me, and it has been. And I didn't plan it. I didn't, sit there in the emergency room or somewhere and kind of what makes sense. What kind of ritual can I do? Or it wasn't like that at all. It just came naturally. And again, I'll pose the question to you. What would come naturally if you were to know that you've got a day left? You've got tonight. Because, basically the doctor said when I presented in the emergency room, where do you want to die? That was their question. And I said, home. And they said, well, your choices are hospice or the cancer ward. And I just said, no, home. And they said, well, if you go into cardiac arrest, my heart stops, we will not resuscitate you. And you need to know that. They will not, pump me and try to bring me back. So basically they were telling me like, this is kind of it. You've got days, was their prognosis. So let's say you hear that. You hear that question. I'm going to invite you to put yourself in my shoes again and again during this share, because it's the most tangible thing that I can give you. I'm not going to ask you to close your eyes and imagine blah, 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 blah. I'm going to ask you to put yourself in my shoes. So you've heard you're not going to be resuscitated if your heart stops. You've been asked, where do you want to die? And you've got two choices. Neither one of them are home. So do you have any ritual? What do you do? What's your first response? Either mentally, emotionally, or physically.
Like I said, I cannot put myself in your shoes in this position, but what's actually part of my ritual every morning is like to sit in meditation and feel, and to accept any feelings that are there. And I think I couldn't do anything else at that moment, because I don't know, what should I do? Run around, and it's the only way to come to what is here and now. And there's nothing I can do about it but to, I don't know, maybe live what is there in this moment as good as I can. I will not go to Hawaii and have my vacation that I always wanted, and it's doubtful that that's going to makes me feel any different anyway. So I can just sit and feel and experience, and so that's the only word that comes to me. I would probably, I don't know, the only thing I can imagine is just sit there and feel whatever is to be felt at that moment.
Yeah. The comment came in that express gratitude and forgiveness to people around me. That's a very common one. So I remember, and still till now, what what I did was feel gratitude. Yeah, it just came naturally. Just to be grateful. I shared this in the first part that I said to Timo, this is no time to be greedy. Because I had, it's like, if I have more, it's icing on the cake, but I've had the cake and it's been damn good. And yeah, sure, I could take some more icing. Why not? But it's not the cake. And actually, the first thing I said in the emergency room, and I was shocked at hearing myself, and I was just weeping, is I just kept repeating, this is a promotion. I have no idea where that came from, and I don't need to know. And I kept repeating, this is a promotion, this is a promotion, this is a promotion. This is before we went to the cancer ward, where the icing on the cake, the no time to be greedy. But they're still in the ER, this is a promotion. And I wasn't trying to convince him or myself. And it was a reflection of the gratitude. And maybe for somebody else, it, of course, would be tragic. And I'm not trying to, do the bypass thing. But that is what happened. And you cannot prepare for that. It's just in real time. What happens? And that was a reflection of the gratitude. This is a promotion. And knowing death as a friend. Deeply, deeply, somewhere inside me. This is a promotion. And Timo was lost, looking at me like, what? This is a promotion. Death is not the end. Physical death is not the end. It's just a cycle. And I'm getting promoted. So gratitude and celebration. And that's what it's been. My little box of chocolates, and whatever expression of gratitude and celebration. Because if I'm just going to be grateful for, the sunny days, if I'm going to just celebrate, whatever you would, those trips to Hawaii or whatever is on people's lists. That's not really living, in my book anyway. So gratitude and celebration, come what may, come what may. So that's the ritual. It came naturally, and it's not about doing a specific, well, it was about chocolate, but it wasn't actually about chocolate. But it took the form of chocolate. Yeah. There was the question, what can't you do without in this process? So my answer, trust. Somebody already mentioned trust. So if I didn't trust, if I didn't have full trust, I think I would be really lost, maybe really depressed. I don't know what I would be. But what I cannot do without is trust. And from the beginning, I've been saying, I trust my soul fully on this. Without that trust, I would be asking, why me? Which I've never asked. Because this is a promotion. Like, who doesn't want to get promoted? But trust. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to go through this process without trust and love. Whether I'm on the receiving end or giving end, which there isn't really any difference, it's just being surrounded or being in the energy of love. And as many of you know or have seen, and it's not about Timo, it's not about our relationship, but the amounts of love and support that he has emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually given me without being able to lean on that rock. Because I've always been the rock. And all of a sudden, I couldn't be the rock for myself. Now, don't forget being the rock for other people. I've always been the rock for me. And then, yeah, for others. I lost that. Like, I couldn't. And he said, or showed, modeled, lean on me. Have that love. And it's not because of our personal or even soul bond, but then to receive all this love through Facebook, through comments, through emojis, through messages. That's been actually the hardest part, is to being on the receiving end of that much love. I wouldn't be able to go through this without that. Knowing that I'm held, surrounded by a container of love, even people that I've never met. I know I said this in the first part. What I would not be able, without, I would not be able to do this, is trust and love. And I would not be able to do this without ascending path practices and descending path practices. Laying there, I know I mentioned this in the first part, laying there, my mind could go anywhere and did. Not about why is this happening to me, but the chatter, the oh my God, it's like, whoa, what's happening? The shock of it. And that being able to calm the mind, the being able to return to peace, to the still waters, ascending path practices, and then descending path practices of how do I regulate, how does my body regulate itself while I'm being carried on a stretcher into the radiation room, and let the body shake and do what it knows in its wisdom that it needs to do. And asking Timo, who always went with me, is there anybody around? Because I couldn't see, literally, my eyes couldn't both be open at the same time. And ask him, is there anybody around? Am I freaking anybody out? Because the last thing I wanted them to do was to give me more medication and think that I'm in pain, or think that I'm, having something that needed an injection or more medicine or whatever, when actually I'm releasing and stabilizing, actually the opposite. So descending path practices, not that I would do them, they would just come naturally because I've spent time with them, and same with the ascending path practices. And this is preparation for death. Just like knowing yourself, identifying as soul, and just like connecting to nature, cycles of nature, of life and death and rebirth. So this is practice. It's like going to the gym to make friends, to prepare for physical death. It takes both, ascending and descending. So now I ask you, ultimately, what is death? And we've been talking about death, or I've been talking about death. You've been listening and reflecting and hopefully feeling. But what is death? Okay, there's physical death. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
I see it in the recent lights of things happening in my life, like the last half year. It's the part in the circle where things go that need going, and things coming in that is finally where there's finally space for, where there hasn't been space before. So sometimes when holding on to things, they're the space holder. That means they're occupying space that is actually wanted for something else by, I don't know, universe or who knows what. Doesn't really matter. So for me, the experience has been that things, yeah, I mean, we say that so often, like things that don't serve anymore, that can go. And this is where death comes in as a helper. And if we let it, we let him. And for me, of course, or at least at the moment, it's not the physical death, but it's like lots of things that are even down to some clients I think about letting go, because it's not the way I want to work anymore. So just simple as that. And making space for, another little part of work where I have someone where I give lessons and I feel, oh, well, that feels alive. And to just follow that, even though, I just earn an hourly wage that's, not very high, but still it's fun. So I still do it. So in the end, it's kind of an exchange, like letting things go that don't serve and letting things in that feel alive.
Yeah, I just wrote the same. It's the end of something, so the new can emerge. And what I can contribute, I resonate with it fully, is that it's really on the receptors level. I feel it on the cellular level, that when I was holding on to my relationship with Tamir and how I perceive home and my safetiness and everything that I was so attached to, that, Taki, you helped me with this attachment. From my childhood trauma, I was so attached to the concept of home, that this is my security. And going through 2 months of allowing all of this to really die, and dying and rebirth few times in the same day. I could be so low, like fully losing hope, but trusting somewhere that creation is holding me, and then receive a miracle that would uplift me. And I could feel it on a cellular level, that when I'm holding to the old, my receptors are closed and life cannot enter fully. And when I had to let go and surrender to the death by trusting and knowing that I'm infinite, then my receptors open, and now it's like the spring. So many new things can emerge in this relationship. We are together and we have the home and we have the family and we are so much in love, but in a very different way. I'm surprising myself every day with the freshness of my being that is coming up, that couldn't couldn't emerge when I was holding on to. So it's actually a beautiful process and very, very liberating. Wow.
What came to me was very similar to what you also shared, Norit. Thank you. Very inspiring. It was almost like this understanding in my body how choice and surrender are coexisting all the time. And it was kind of an answer to one of the questions that I was thinking earlier, which was when is death really kind of giving up almost like the will to live, and when is it actually kind of surrendering to what needs to go. And now I realize like the question was the polarity is kind of like it's like either or, but now it's both. I feel like it's both.
So yeah, it's kind of like feeling. We don't get to choose what we feel, but we do get to choose whether we feel or not. So with death as an energy, if we're not just thinking about this physical form in this life, we get to choose whether we give our consent. We get to choose whether we work with it, practice it, recognize it all around us, make friends with it, etc. But we don't get to choose the circumstances. We don't get to choose the details of it. Things really go bad when we practice that. So I know the moment that I gave my consent. I didn't give my consent to having brain cancer. I didn't choose the details. But I did give my consent to letting go. I did give my consent to the initiatory process. Not anything specific about it. Well, actually, yes, there was a specificness to it, but it didn't have to do with a particular experience, physical form or otherwise. Well, at the soul level, yes. And all initiation involves death because death is just, as was just shared, a letting go. It's a purification in one way of, okay, that which no longer serves. It's a destruction in one way of, and it's a reorganization in another way of, this will now, or you'll be put in your place, or this will be, you might end up in another country, or you might end up this way or that way, who knows, but, or in a different relationship, or the same relationship in a different way. It's a purification, destruction, and reorganization energy. So you don't get to choose those details. You just get to give your consent, because if you don't give your consent and something does need to die, and of course, something always need, we're going through that process, that cycle. So something does need to die. And if I give my consent, then there's less resistance, and therefore there's less suffering. If I don't give my consent, I may feel like there's a power over move. I may feel like there's a, I'm being domed, S&M kind of the Dom and the, yeah, so I may feel like that, but if I actually recognize what's happening, that this is a gift, this is love, this is a friend who's come to say, hey, I'm here as an ally, I'm here to support you, I'm here to love you, I'm here to help you open this door. Or it's been shared that the new can come in and et cetera, et cetera. And if we recognize it, then we can give our consent. It's not about the details. I've said a few times, like, I wouldn't have ordered this off the menu, but actually, apparently I did. I did order it off the menu. Some part of me did. Not these details, but yeah, to go through this death portal, life and death portal. So, I did order it off the menu. Yeah, so let me see. Yeah, what is death? What is actual death? That was the question. So if I, again, going back to ascending, know yourself as a soul, identify as soul, eternal, boundless, limitless, and then the descending path version of part of nature, part of the cycles of nature, whether that's the moon or the seasons, et cetera, et cetera. If I know myself as part of the whole, whether it's ascending or descending, then how can there be death as an end? It's a trick question. There can't be an end because it's a cycle and it's interconnected. So if I'm interconnected, one leaf drops from the tree. Yes, it does. And it becomes compost. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That's the end of that leaf. Yes. The full moon becomes a new moon, which becomes the full moon, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, absolutely. This is not denying the matter, the material level reality. But is it an end? So if I recognize my interconnectedness, actual death is physical in the form, matter level is impossible. So without bypassing, without some love and light kind of theory, this kind of thing, if I recognize my interconnectedness as part of a cycle, then I'm part of the whole, then death can only happen if I'm disconnected or I'm in a separate, if I'm separate. So actually, death can only happen to the separate self. Now that was very difficult for me to swallow, actually, because I've been very proudly waving the flag of the individual and the separate self. What's the truth? But actually, the greater truth is that death is the letting go of the separate self. There's really no way around that, experientially or theoretically. So all our explorations around death lead us back to surrender to the whole, connection, however we want to phrase it. but the end of the separate self. That's the only thing that can really die. Like the leaf is not really dying, it's just going back into being compost and becomes mud. Yeah.
This is making me so happy.
Okay. So the next question was, what dies last? My answer is, I haven't gotten there yet in this life. I'll let you know when I get there. However, since this is about my personal experience, not theory, I would like to comment on, because I've said about, this is a promotion, or this is no time to be greedy, things that naturally came. So I'm going to share about that. What's the last thing? I don't know what's the last thing that goes, or what's the last thing to die. But I do know that after the biopsy, after they opened my skull and took out a tumor to test it, to really get to the conclusion, is it cancer? What kind of cancer? How to then approach my treatment, get me a treatment plan that was specific for what was happening in my particular brain. I was waiting for Timo to come, because that process took whatever it took, and the operating surgeon told me it's cancer, and I was waiting for Timo, and I was calling him, like I wasn't calling him on my iPhone or whatever. I was calling him through our connection. They said to me, "Are you okay?" No, I don't. Yeah. I said, I'm calling Timo. They were like, "What?" It's like, yeah, I know he can hear me. I know it. And then I just started, again, very spontaneously, very just organically, naturally. I just started saying, "I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you." Just repeat it like on, this shows how old I am, but like on, on the loop of the cassette player kind of thing. It was just on a loop. I love you. I love you. And I realized afterwards what I was doing, because it wasn't about him, but I realized after several loops, a few minutes, these were the last words I wanted in my consciousness. These were the words that I wanted to depart with. And it wasn't from a place of like, I want this, and this is what is good theory, and no. Like if now, because my brain was just cut open and my skull is open and all of that, and if these are the last breaths, these are my last words. And it wasn't I love you, Timo, but it was about love. It was, I'm staying with this. And I just kept saying it. Like inside, but saying it. And like a very soft whisper kind of thing. I love you. 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 Like this is the karma I'm going out on. This is the to be continued in the next body. So I don't know what dies last, because I haven't gotten there yet. And I don't remember from previous lives. But I know what I did when I thought, okay, these might be the last breaths. I know what my body or my mind or my emotional body did naturally. So now I pose that to you. Put yourself in my shoes. your head is open or whatever. I don't know. Your shoulder. I don't know. Heart operation, whatever. You have very good reason to think these are your last breaths. What's your karmic exit? What's the thread that's going to continue in the next body? Not what you would like them to be, but what upwells, what bubbles naturally comes up. Feel it. This is going to the gym to connect to death. There's a comment share typed in. So the last words are, I am free. And another one. Love this question is, and yes, dying to love is perfect. Dying not knowing and in surrender is also beautiful. Do we die? What dies? I often see it as raindrops going back into the ocean. You're welcome to unmute and speak for yourself if you wish. Your camera, your visual will not be recorded, but there's a typed share. I'm the light. So whatever your words or wishes are on your last breath, recognizing that part of it has to do with your identification as a soul, and part of it has to do with your identification as an animal, as a human in the form.
I'm not quite sure what to share, Taki. I shared what I did in the words, and I'm just sensing a lot of gratitude to you for holding this, and also for people being here, and knowing that I've worked with death most of my life and been almost there, but not quite. And I know how difficult it is for people to make friends with it and to face our mortality. And I think, you know, what you shared earlier about we have to give up on the individual self, you know, and unless we are faced with that, the truth of that, it's hard to do because we're brought in as separate beings. And so I just know how difficult it is even for people to broach this subject, let alone when they're facing death themselves. You know, so thank you. I just wanted to say that. And I'm Dom's mum, by the way.
I have a couple more notes I'll get through, and then I know we're already at the 1 hour mark. Whoever needs to go, the replay will be available. If you can stay, please stay. So one of the keys for me has also been like, okay, what really dies, or what ultimately what is death? But also then this word death, it's got a lot of baggage, at least for most cultures, not all, but yeah, it's got like, again, this is the end. This is the worst thing that could happen on the physical front. What is it really? Maybe you've had experience of loved ones, seeing them decay or being there at their time of last breath, et cetera, et cetera. So it's got a lot of baggage. And one of the things I've explored, let's say in this past month, is actually what would happen if not what would happen if, but when actually I'd like, because even though friends with death and blah, 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 sure, there's some baggage there. I drink the same water and breathe the same air as everybody else. So of course I'm influenced, of course. So surrender, it's just named surrender. Because what it can invoke is a powerlessness, because it's not something you can control or dominate or get to choose the details of. A powerlessness, which might also then translate into or have two sides of the coin. So the other side might be a helplessness. But all of the powerlessness, the helplessness, or you could even add to that the loss of control or not being able to control. And these come up, and maybe you have another 1,000 of things that you could add to that. I start there. I actually surrender. Like that leaf surrenders to gravity. Surrendering and accepting not knowing. So the surrender to a higher power doesn't have to be Jesus or God or Allah or any dogma kind of thing, religion or anything like that. But surrender to the higher power can very equally be your own soul. spirit. Call it what you want. I surrender. Death invites us to such a, I thought I knew what surrender was. I really thought I knew what surrender was until I landed up to the ER room for the second time. And that's when they did the whole, we will not resuscitate you, where do you want to die bit. And I realized, oh, the testing. Oh, surrender. Ah, surrender to not knowing, surrender to not having any control. Surrendering to the unknown, to the mystery, surrendering to a higher power, a higher wisdom, a higher plan, higher, whatever, bigger. So when I not stopped using the word jazz, but danced with it in a way that allows the baggage to, okay, let me take off the cultural or generational or lifetimes karmic stuff of the word death and it's as a concept. And actually I take it as a surrender and a letting go of control or needing to control, needing to know. It was such a breakthrough. And what I realized, again, we go to the ascending and the descending. These are huge, like one crutch on one hand, one crutch on another hand kind of thing that you can lean on. Both are needed in order to walk. Or you can hop around, but so this, where is your open door? And me realizing that actually my door that's open is the descending, is connection to nature, the cycles of rhythms of life, and a very material earthly plane. And when you talk to me about death of soul, I'm like, what? And realizing actually, why is that any different than death of this form? Which I'm totally okay with, actually. That doesn't shake me. That doesn't actually invoke much in me. But death of the soul? Oh, now you've pushed a button. So use the door that's open, whether it's ascending or descending or somewhere in between. There's always an open door. May not be very obvious. Just feel into it for now. I invite you, like I did for myself within this past month, because that's where you'll find resistance in the polarity. But when you know that actually I have access to this, maybe it has a lot of baggage when it's this way or that way. But let me take off this backpack or put down this luggage. I know death. I've gone through death as a soul, as a body, as a rock, I don't know, as an animal. I've gone through death many times in the physical form and in the soul realm. I'm not going to buy that anybody's here on earth for the first time on this call anyway. I'm not buying that one. So where's the open door? So I can embrace and be embraced by the energy of death more deeply. Anybody want to share about their open door or what happens as a result of whatever I just shared, of taking off the baggage associated with death and finding your way through it?
I want to share, it's very symbolic. In this dying 2 months period, happened to me twice that there was a small bird locked in the house, trying to get out and keep on bumping her body into the closed window. And I really did an attempt for more than 1 hour to communicate with her, not to scare her, and to be able to open the window for her. And that symbol really stayed with me in the whole time and gave me a lot of inspiration. And now, in this last hour, when we speak, happens the same situation, but vice versa. There is a bird that keeps on bumping into the dome from the outside and distracting me from the like, this is the only thing that distracts me from this session. And I know everything that happens is a part of the session. And I think it's a symbol for all of us. And I'm trying to fully grasp what is going on, because she's trying to get in, but it's just a glass. I can't even open it. It's not something that can be opened. And it's keep on happening while we talk. So I just wanted to share that, and maybe we can understand together what is the closed window, open door. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. If you have any inspiration, or we can just leave it like this also.
I often see birds as ancestors. Yeah. And I'm wondering whether the bird is showing us that actually they're here. They're here. Yeah. We just need to go through that door. You know, we're coming to. So for me, the open door is that connection, that thread of connection with my ancestors, whatever that might mean. You know, it could be any ancestors of the past. Yeah. So I tend to go down as well, Taki, rather than up.
I think that for me, both your question about the open door and the situation with the bird is, I see that my biggest challenge, and you talked about it before, is to open my receptors to the love. Like, okay, dying, fear, this, I'm very good at that, going into this, but to really open up the door in, not letting go. This I practice, but letting in and observe the love. I think maybe this is a part of the symbol. I feel there is more to that maybe I'll realize later, and I'll share with you by mail if I will have an inspiration. Thank you.
To me, the answer to the bird metaphor and the open door is the same. What's kept the door closed for me is man-made structure. In this case, it's the glass window, and my need to know what happens, and surrendering to the unknown is what opens the door for me. Dismantling that structure that we tend to keep and like hold us safe, opening that door and letting the ancestor our freedom to run free.
I'll just piggyback you, because what came to me is freedom. That's all. Just whether it's this way or that way is this very tangible quest for freedom, whether it's the soul's freedom from the encasing in the material form, or whether it's the body's freedom to return to its cycle, and just freedom. Yeah.
Just continuing with this bird issue, and I just want to share that in 1 month I have been brought with physical hands from 2 persons, and from the nature 3 death birds that were dead birds. And my question has been here now, what they symbolize at the moment for me, because years back, these birds alive, they were ancestors or dead people coming to visit me. But what this means with these birds that are not alive, and something is now bubbling inside me, because you are talking about this soul death, and I don't know if this is something which is starting to yeah, I don't know, but just wanted to share to you. It was important. Thank you.
I notice a part of my soul, not so much opening the door or finding the incentive for death, but the part that resists the soul death is the soul's desire to deliver death itself and not die, so that the actual death can come. The real death, the life can come. And I just want to name this because I actually find it quite amusing and interesting that the soul wants to take over and not give up, and wants to take the credit for the death energy. Kind of way.
To honor the long share that came in earlier, there's a part that says resistance to exist in the physical form, a very common one, and in this life, and death as a thought has been more like a comfort to which I turn when things get rough. It's a very common one, that there's resistance to being here fully on the material plane or on earth. Now I've lost it. Yes. And then there's the other side of the story, which is fear of death. So this is the last bit that I would like to explore with you. Not everyone has a fear of death, as we name it, of a physical death, but I would bet that if you probe in different ways, there's some resistance or fear of death in nearly all of us. I won't say everybody. I don't know. So the invitation is to explore for yourself, what is that actually about? Now you can very simply or easily say, okay, yes, fear of death. Go to its core, go to its essence. What is the actual fear about? What are you actually afraid of? Just, that's our last exploration together.
I actually experienced that the other way around. That in the mornings when I go, like in my ritual, go through my emotions, and there are negative emotions, like, oh, if it's anger, I find, okay, well, this anger is good because it tries to protect me. Protect me from what? Protect me from harm. Protect me from being threatened. So it's actually a reaction to fear of death. If I'm sad, I'm afraid of losing something. So if I lose something important, what's the feeling? It feels existential. So it's fear of death. So for me, actually, it's the other way around, that all the emotions, the negative emotions that I feel actually are fear of death, fear of losing something, fear of being existentially threatened. And this is why I think now, realizing in this talk and with what you shared, is, oh, well, now I know why this helps me so much, this ritual, because I remember, like now I understand in all this context is actually I'm remembering death every day in that ritual. I haven't thought about it like that until now, but this is practically then makes sense in that way.
When I was faced with a diagnosis, I realized my truth was I was afraid to really live more than to die. That was the truth for me.
What comes up for me right now is that the realization that my soul mission actually is leading up to the death of my soul. And the fear of death is actually about the sadness or fear or both of not being here as a soul to witness the end result of that mission. And yet it's the deepest love I can give as a soul.
There's also a tight share, the fear of leaving my loved ones behind. So just to also comment that this fear of living is I commented on the will to live, going into it deeply, then results into going into the surrender to death more deeply, and vice versa. They're just two sides of the same coin. That's a very common one too. Fear of living, actually, or living more fully. So there's been some, in my opinion, powerful, strong invitation to self-reflections. And again, it's not theory, and of course you will not know until that moment. And you can visualize, imagine, or whatever. but you will not know until that moment. And going to the gym, without going to the gym, you're highly unlikely to, get toned or build endurance, cardiovascular, or whatever you're going to the gym for. So going to the gym is important. So going to the gym with death. So or for death, or with death, as death, that we practice every day, whether we like it or not. When we go to sleep, when we have these moments or invitations for surrender, or to embracing not knowing, instead of waiting for death with a capital D, to recognize so many things that happen in our daily life as small deaths. Then when it actually comes to the ER room, or you're breathing, having a hard time breathing, or whatever it is for you in this form, in this life, that doesn't catch you by surprise, like you've been actually dancing with death energy, and you've known it and you've recognized it. So in my opinion, the worst thing that can happen is that you haven't recognized that you've been surrounded by, invited into this love affair. With this dear friend that you've been dancing with so many lifetimes. So what touches me the most is that we've reached that stage in humanity. In the first video I did, which was from the ER room, from the ER, emergency room, welcoming people to get on the deathbed with me. And one of the things I said was that we've reached this stage in humanity, our evolution in humanity. So that's one of the most touching things for me. That we don't have to do it alone. Or in secret, like this is a bad thing, or this is something to be ashamed of, or whatever. This is a huge thing. Beyond comprehension. I cannot even fathom how huge it is. So thank you for the opportunity. And I have to admit, today was the first time since March when I let go of basically everything on the external form front. It's the first time that I was inspired, impassioned, about sharing from this deeper place and supporting others. I did the previous talk and I've done posts and this and that, but there's something different today, and it just makes sense. Of course, it's about death. Of course. So if I do step back into supporting others to journey, it will be about death. I've been granted this gift, and it's huge for not my personal experience, but it's a sign for where we're like this Tibetan master who says, well, our fear of death as humans is what's the biggest block to soul initiation. So leaning into it the way we have been for over an hour, or for an hour and 40 minutes, the way we all have been, means we've been leaning into soul initiation. Not only our personal, not only collective. For everyone who's riding this surfing this wave on this planet. That's just so huge. And this isn't like, theory. It is spiritual theory. Yes, it is, but not just. And I know it from what I have received being in this journey since March. So thank you for being a part of it. It's 9 months since March. Yes, it is 9 months since March. And they say the eclipse in the end of this 9-month period, like pregnancy. Well, look at that. I'm about to give birth. Thank you. So, thank you all. If you need to revisit any of these self-reflections that you were invited in, the recording will be up in public. Please, if you know others who would lean in, this is our invitation as humans at this stage of our evolution. There's no way for us to turn our back on it. We're not falling apart, we're falling into place. And it's messy and it's painful to watch. It's gut-wrenching, it's heart-wrenching. It is. And it's necessary. Gratitude and celebration. Even for this. I'm just so excited we're here. As humans. Like I've been waiting eons for this. That might be an exaggeration, I don't know. But it's been a while. So please expose as many people who could possibly lean in. Your version, these recorded sessions, whatever. To a leaf falling, whatever.